Michael Grosso studied classical Greek and obtained his Ph.D. in philosophy from Columbia University. His dissertation was on death and the myth of the true earth in Plato's Phaedo dialogue. His interest in the therapeutic benefits of altered states of consciousness led him to the American Philosophical Practitioners Association, APPA, that's us, where for a spell he served as reviews editor. I recall that I was happily surprised to meet him at the first APPA annual meeting that I attended in the 20 teens, I forget what year, maybe it was even sooner, after already having used his book, Soul Making, in some of my intro philosophy classes. Along the way, Michael found himself the subject of extraordinary paranormal experiences. This led him to move to Charlottesville, Virginia, the University of Virginia, and the Department of Psychiatry's division devoted to parapsychology. This put him in touch with some of the leading researchers, which resulted in writing books and papers on this controversial field of study. In a sentence, Dr. Grosso concludes that science, not just the University of Virginia contingent of research, now has a vast body of data before it, dating at least from William James, that points to extraordinary potentials of human evolution and creativity, indeed, to a new paradigm of the human condition. Okay, that's the end of the bio. I am a big fan of one of the leading researchers into the paranormal, Dean Radin. So I'd like to read Dean's endorsement of Michael's book. If you don't believe in, quote, if you don't believe in miracles, you need to read this book. If after reading it, you still don't believe in miracles, then you need to read it again, but more carefully. Michael Grosso's Smile of the Universe, that's the title of the book, forces our eyes to open to a realm beyond the tenets of science or religion, and to something larger that is, for want of a better word, truly miraculous. End of quote. Dean Radin, Chief Scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and author of Real Magic. I'm getting an echo here. I don't know why. All right. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michael to the APPA Book Club series. Michael, welcome. And please tell us about yourself. First, tell us about how you came to philosophy.
How I came to philosophy? I guess it was through my study of Greek. I had already been writing and immersed in the world of Greek philosophy just by studying the language. And I guess that's not how I just casually and obviously slid over into the study of philosophy. And I was able to do this. I was considering at first going on and getting a more advanced degree in classical Greek. And but I had a great teacher who introduced me to Moses Hadas, who was the head of the philosophy department um, at Columbia. And somehow I got right into Columbia University without even having to make an effort. And so after a while, I took a couple of courses and decided to switch, after all, into philosophy. And I was given as a text that I had to be tested on, Aristotle's Ethics, which was an interesting book to immerse myself in. And I managed to do very well on that. And that's how I got into philosophy. From there on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the echo is. When I was trying to figure that out in my audio settings, and then something went wrong on my end, so I stopped trying. But all right, so how did you come to focus on the paranormal, Michael?
That is experience. I'm an empiricist. And I remember my first ESP experience when I was 5 years old. I had moved in from around the corner to a new house because my mom had a daughter, an ex-daughter coming, so we needed more room. And uh, I didn't know any of the kids in the block, but I knew a kid called Johnny, who seemed kind of friendly. I'm having I'm echoing here. I don't know if that's me or what, but anyway, I'll get through this quickly. Uh, I
Yeah,
remember.
Michael, you're only occasionally echoing.
Okay,
Maybe it's about when each of us, you or me, gets too close to the mic, it might be causing that. So maybe try back up just a little bit.
yeah. Well, what I had, 5 years old, I had no friends on the block. And one morning, it was a Saturday morning, I had a vivid dream that I saw this kid whose name I knew, Johnny, and he comes right up to me and says, "Want to play off the wall?" This was a game we would play. Just hit a ball off the wall and catch it and all that. And I woke up, uh, didn't give much. Well, actually, it was a very vivid dream. I can still remember it, believe it or not. And I went out after breakfast. I stepped out, and there was Johnny bouncing a ball in his hand. And he said the exact same words. "Do you want to play off the wall?" And I said, "Sure." And I never forgot that uh, odd experience because I had this vivid dream. Most ESP dreams tend to be more vivid, by the way, than usual. And so that kind of, it didn't quite blow my mind, but it surprised me. At 5 years old, my mind wasn't blowable yet. And so that's the first time. And then soon after, I had a very rich dream life. And before you know it, growing up, and I started to get interested in reading about the paranormal. And when I finally got to Columbia University, I remember an experience I had uh, that fixed me more firmly on my path. Um, I had a buddy of mine, I shared with him a paranormal experience I had. Frankly, I forget what it was. It was a minor thing, but it was striking to me. And he looked at me and he said, "That's impossible. That would imply dualism." So the notion that my experience was going to imply something impossible took me as absurd. And even though I was not inclined toward joining the rest of the gang in hooking up with materialism. So from that point on, then I was even more inspired, as it were, to persist in the study of the paranormal. But that's only the beginning, because the main dramatic part of what led me into this field is that I continued to have experiences. And I'll mention a couple because they're quite interesting. And for a guy who's never had an experience like this, it was quite surprising. I had a student who happened to be very bright, and I was at this time teaching a course in the parapsychology of religion at the college I was teaching at. And so my student told me, um, you know, I have out of body experiences. And I said, "Oh, that's cool." And I didn't take it too seriously. She was bright, but I said, "Okay." And then I said as a joke to her, uh, "Okay, maybe one of these days you can come and pay me a visit in your out of body state." Just like that, like a joke. And needless to say, I didn't expect anything to happen. About 2 days later, maybe 3 days, I can't remember, 3, 4 days later, I wasn't keeping notes on this, but I remember what happened. I woke up one morning. At this time, I was living in Jersey City by myself, no one in the house but me, and I was playing the flute. It was a hobby. And I had a flute stand right next to my main bookcase, still behind me, the same bookcase I still have all these years. And I woke up in the morning, bearing in mind there's nobody in the house but me. And I noticed my music stand is right in the middle of the living room. And I knew I did not move it there. And so I'm sitting there puzzled as how did my music stand levitate into the, which I normally had by a book, by my bookshelf, right in the middle of the living room. As I'm thinking that thought, the phone rings and it's my student. Um, and she says to me, how do you like the new furniture arrangement?
Oh my God.
And then she recounts to me how the previous night she slipped out of her body. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And she thought, I think I'll go visit Professor Grosso. And just by thinking, she found herself in my kitchen where I was at about 11 o'clock, by the way. And I was doing what I usually do, had my head over, stuck in a book, right? And she was trying to get my attention and even tried to touch me, but she couldn't touch me and she couldn't get my attention. So, frustrated by her inability to prove to me that she had done what she said she could do, she wandered around and described my kitchen quite accurately and the other parts of my room, and noticed the book stand, the music stand. And she grabbed it, and this time she was able to move it. Again, I don't know why she couldn't touch me, but was able to move the music stand. Maybe there's a part of her that didn't want to freak me out by touching me. That's a plausible explanation to me. At any rate, she moved the music stand, and lo and behold, I found it, you see, in the following morning. Now, the fact that someone could, A, get out of their body at will, come to my house, not even know where the hell I lived at that time, and physically move a physical object hit me hard right in the middle of my brain, okay? And so that was just one very early. It turns out that this particular student of mine also had a problem with her house. There was a ghost in her house. And she told me that at least 9 people, including herself, her daughters, her husband, and folks nearby, her name was Liz, by the way, uh, had some kind of an encounter with the ghost. And he was a dirty old man of a ghost because he liked to show up in the toilet while the girls were taking showers. And anyway, so I thought this is pretty interesting. And I invited myself over. I said, could I spend a night in your haunted house and see what I see? So she invited me over.
Michael, remind me, who was this woman to you?
She was my student,
Another student. Oh, the same student.
same student.
Oh, right, right. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
She's quite a gal. She had a lot of, I've been in touch with her until recently. I'm sort of out of touch now. But anyway, I was invited to spend the night in a house, and she put me in a room which had a place where I could sleep if I wanted to. And but it was also the door was open to an area where the ghost frequently appeared. So there I was. I was sitting in this room. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Frankly, I didn't expect to see anything or to have any experience whatsoever. You know, it's weird stuff. You don't expect it to happen, but there was a good reason to go because so many people allegedly had seen this ghost. So I'm sitting there scribbling in my notebook as usual, when suddenly I hear a gong ring. And I look around in the room and I notice up on the wall is a gong with a little drum. But I didn't ring it. And who else rang it? Everyone else is asleep upstairs. So I inferred that the friggin' ghost did it. And okay, wow, success. So I go back to I'm racking my brains. I'm tempted to scream and wake my neighbors, wake them up, but I don't do that. I go back to my seat after I had gotten up and done this, made my own sound out of the gong. I put it back, sat down, and started to write what I experienced. And then I looked up, and lo and behold, there's the ghost, exactly where she said it often turns up. And what I saw was a diaphanous, human-like form. I say human-like because I couldn't see the details, but it was definitely a form that resembled a human being. And I'm staring at it, and it comes right at me across the room and into where I was sitting, wraps itself around me and paralyzes me. And I'm trying to shout, it's here, it's here, right? Well, what else am I supposed to do? It lasts about 3 seconds, and the son of a gun lets go of me, and that was the end of it. So that was just one. I've had a lot of weird experiences, but when I had those experiences, I see the ghost. It physically attacks me. I hear it making a sound. Uh, my student is able to move physical objects in space. Well, what the heck, man? Something's going on. And so that those are just some examples of experiences I had. Um, uh, Later on, not too much later, I had a visit from my dead grandmother in my bedroom. And here's a nice, I'll tell you this one too.
Michael, I'm loving these stories, so keep going.
Okay, okay, okay. So by this time, I was a graduate student and possibly teaching. I don't remember I don't keep dates and write things down. But I was living in Jersey City, and it was very hot, and I couldn't sleep in my bedroom. I was living by myself still, and I got up out of bed and went on the couch in the living room. And sitting back there and just trying to maybe fall asleep again, but I couldn't fall asleep. And just lay there and I look up and there's my grandma, dead grandma. And next to her is a completely strange and beautiful woman that I've never seen before in my life. And the two of them are staring at me. They're just peering at me and through me. That was the feeling I had. And beyond me. Like their gaze was fixated on me, but simultaneously on the space around me. And this only lasted for, again, seconds, but vivid, right? It's vivid. And what the heck is my grandma doing right in front of, vivid, by the way. She doesn't look diaphanous or anything, solid. She happened to be a somewhat overweight woman, but maybe she lost a little weight in the afterworld because she didn't look that fat. At any rate, the following day, I called my mom. My mother still lived fairly close to me. And I told her what happened. And I said, Mom, this woman this second woman that I didn't recognize looks a little bit like you. And she said, come on over to the house. I want to show you a photograph. And so it was a long bit of a haul. I went and visited my mom, which I did occasionally. And she showed me a photograph, a family photograph that I had never seen of her on her side of the family. There's my grandma, and right next to her is this beautiful woman who turns out to be her sister, also dead. And everyone used to say that this woman, Catherine was her name, resembled my mom, who happened to be a very attractive woman too. And so anyway, I picked it out immediately, you see. And I said, have I ever seen her? And she said, no. And I'll tell you a story about what happened. Grandma, her mom, my grandma, came one day with Aunt Katie to see me when I was born. My mother had me in a broken down carriage that she was embarrassed to show. My parents were poor, not totally poor. My father used his back to make a good living to raise a family of four. But she was embarrassed to show me in this wretched, broken down uh, bed that I was in, or whatever the heck it was I was sleeping in, and did not. So they did not come in and get a look out of me. Now I'm speculating that years later, assuming there's another world, and the grandma and sister are having a conversation, they say, "Hey, what do you go? What do you say we go meet Mike, Miguel, the Miguel we never got to meet?" You see, and that's my only possible explanation of why they decided to pay me that visit. Anyway, that's an interesting story, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. All of them are interesting stories.
And I could go on, and of course I've seen a lot, read a lot. I hang out with Raymond Moody, and I were buddies. I mean, he's the guy that launched the near-death experience movement.
Yeah.
Ken, total buddies with these guys, and unfortunately they've moved away, and I don't have their company anymore. Uh, we used to hang out a lot and talk a lot, get high a lot, and speculate on what the heck's going on. But so anyway, that's how I got in. And then, of course, I read extensively into the literature and overwhelming amounts of literature. And I met all kinds of wonderful people who have had experiences, who are researchers. And then I started to write books of my own. And I had other experiences, which you may remember in the book. Half the time, I don't remember. I've had so many experiences. Uh, I, I remember them all if I'm told, because they always made an impression on me. But every now and then I remember something that I completely forgot and I add it to my list. But so lots and lots of experience, lots of reading of the best writers in the field, going back to William James, uh, and in the ancient world. I mean, there's scattered all over world literature accounts of what we call paranormal phenomena. And anybody who does the homework, the folks, our good friends, the materialists who don't believe in any of this stuff, all I do is wag my finger at them and say, you've got to do your homework, boys and girls. Because if you do, I mean, you may not have experiences the way I have, which makes it a whole lot easier uh, and very challenging. No one's going to talk me out of what I know of experience. I'm not an easy person to convince. I have a strong sense of self, put it that way, and no one has ever budged my standard, or rather my point of view on this subject. And I do my best to. I have a very superb buddy of mine here in town, who he still, no matter what I tell him, he can't bring himself to believe any of this stuff, but he's polite and he listens carefully to me. So that's how I got to be where I am right now.
Great. That was a really great and thorough explanation. I'll just add a kind of humorous anecdote. Well, too, I have had many similar experiences and a similar explanation for how and why I have been interested in this phenomenon. I've never done any formal research about it. I've only written a little bit about it here and there, but I wrote a draft monograph after I read Soul Making and another book by one of my colleagues at my college, Joseph Felser, who wrote a book called Back to Paradise, which was a very similar thing, an account of all these phenomena and how to understand them as a philosopher. And I remember sharing the draft with a colleague of mine who's here today, and there he is, he's Boran Beric. And Boran is like your friend in town. He has that materialist, skeptical attitude. And I remember his initial reaction to me was, Rick, how could you believe this stuff? What about Descartes and skepticism and everything? And so that's just a little funny thing I thought I'd mention. Great. All right. So I think you probably already answered the next question, but why did you write? I mean, I've had a lot of these experiences. Many people have, but some people won't share them. Some people do. Why'd you write this book?
I mean, I think it's important. And where I am now, which I'm happy to just summarize I'll tell you, eventually, uh, I came to see or believe that all of this stuff, and I think there's tons of it out there. I mean, come visit me in my library and you'll see just my library is enough. But my view now, at first I was just fascinated by the research and meeting all these interesting people and having all these interesting stories, you know. Now, 2025, um, I look around at the world, and I don't want to get political or say anything sort of grim, but it does seem to me that we're at the edge of some serious world uh, crises. Uh, I've been reading at length about all of the investment all over the world now, countries, leading, of course, is America, uh, buying weapons of mass destruction. We have that's our first problem, the growing risk of nuclear war. You probably know it's the Union of Concerned Scientists have put doomsday time to 89 seconds before midnight, the closest it's ever been since World War II. That's the first thing we're confronting now. The second thing, of course, is we've wreaked havoc on the planet itself, and it is the darling planet is getting back at us now, in all kinds of horrible ways. Even though I live in a pretty safe neighborhood, twice my house was almost smashed to smithereens by a gust of wind that blew a massive trunk of a tree down. It literally licked my house, the leaves. Didn't touch anything, and I'm living in a safe area. Anyway, my view is this, that we as a species, and this sounds grandiose, but heck, I'm a philosopher. I can be grandiose a little bit, right? Just a little. Heading toward major calamity on two major fronts. And I believe that some kind of, and in quotes, miraculous intervention. I don't literally believe, I'm not religious, by the way, but the human race has to wake up and evolve to a next stage. My own view is that all of the data that we have about the paranormal, including some of the things we haven't mentioned, the mystical dimension, for example, the transformations of consciousness reported in the near-death experience, which I'm extremely interested in, and I had one myself. My purpose now, my academic purpose, is to join others, because I'm not alone here, in speaking to the need to launch our fellow sisters and brothers on this planet into a new form of higher education, and to and by which I mean the all the enormous data that we have about the paranormal. What we need to do, in my judgment, is incorporate, finally bring science in full scale to enable us to learn how to develop these psychic abilities and train ourselves in acquiring them in order to learn how to, A, relate to the natural world in a more sensitive fashion, and above all, to relate to each other in a more sensitive fashion. I'm fascinated by the reports of people who have near-death experiences who emerge, and it's not a constant variable, but it's a recurrent variable in the NDE. When they emerge with a sense of a telepathic sensitivity to other people, uh, a greater compassion, a greater awareness and sensitivity to other human beings. I believe that there are methods available. Some of them are very old. Go back to the ancient Greek, an annual myth, an annual process they had that culminated in the psychedelic transformation of consciousness. I mean, people have been doing this for years. The planet has to wake up to a new way of educating ourselves and moving to what I consider to be the next stage of our human evolution. When you look around at the world around us, the violence, the barbarity, the hideous ways that people are. I don't want to go into the details because I'm start sounding political, but uh, we're at a stage of our experience as a species where we need to introduce a brand new modality of higher education to bring us to the effects of which will hopefully transform our consciousness and come to a way of living on this planet that is more human, more in tune with life itself, and not just human life. The scientists are talking about a million species headed for extinction. So there's where I am. It's a wild, but it's the only hope that I have. I don't have a glum, I have a realistic sense beside my sense of the extraordinary and the paranormal and the poetic. I have maybe it's my Italian nature, uh, a grasp of reality. I don't live in a cloud, up in clouds. And what I see is grim and horrible. And I didn't even plan to say this, what I'm saying right now, but your smiling is inspiring me a little bit. Giving me
Michele, amico.
That's my sense right now. Why I'm working on a book, a new book, um, Our Unfinished Evolution is the title of it. And what I want to do is in this book is demonstrate that we have enough data to construct a model for how we can complete our evolution as a species. And it's possible if we wake up and and become committed as a species.
Yeah, let me just have a couple of responses. Um, Jeffrey Kripal wrote a book not long ago called The Flip, which I think is moving in the same direction. It's an aspirational thing about the ways in which what your basic idea is, if I could try to paraphrase it, is that, well, an exemplary transformative experience which brings about something like a possibly better state of human being is the near-death experience, more often than not all of them. But related to that is that the near-death experience is in a broader umbrella category that includes a lot of the kinds of experiences that you and I have had and that Jeffrey Kripal has had or that Dean Radin has researched. So like, I wanted to add when you were talking that many people who have mystical experiences across the array of categories that William James first identified, like about a dozen categories of different types of numinous, etc., you name it. They all, many, if not the majority of them, seem to be transformed, maybe not to the same degree, but in the similar direction as people who have those positive near-death experiences. So that seems to be the vision that you're working from, that this kind of potential that human beings have is sorely needed right now, and it can actually be studied and turned into a kind of almost an enzyme to speed up our predicament before things, before the shit hits the fan, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that might hit the fan. And one of the things that might hit the fan real soon that you didn't mention is the AI revolution. It's just going to transform everything. And it's just like adding, jet fuel into a problem to speed everything up. So who knows what we're on the cusp of. But yeah. Oh, interesting. I'll be looking forward to that next book as well. I'm sure you know those people personally, Dean Radin and Jeffrey Kripal and all of them. And yeah, just if you read even just a few of their books or listen to even a few of their YouTube videos, you'll imagine, I'm speaking to the audience now, a good taste, a good summary of what Michael is suggesting lies in all those books behind him. There's a tremendous amount of evidence in favor of this stuff that most people who are empiricists and materialists and think that there's nothing to any of this seem to be suffering from what I think it's Dean Radin calls, well, not just him, but people who do psi research, PSI, research into the psychic phenomena, called the file drawer effect. Any data that doesn't fit, that won't get something published, winds up in the file drawer. And, so the data that the materialist is seeing is highly skewed. They're not getting the full picture. So yeah, I'm really curious about your next book is going to lay out the argument to prove that these things are real. I can't wait to read that.
What I try to do is just draw a big picture of all the types of phenomena, but I'm going to try to write it. I'm going to have references and all of that, the scholarly, but with a poetic touch, make it come to life. The feel of how it, in other words, try to appeal to the human imagination, not just the intellectual challenge of confronting a body of knowledge that is intellectually challenging, but something that uh, can touch people and move them. And I even have a model. Go ahead.
So you're not just writing to try to persuade the scientific skeptic. You're trying to reach more human beings because that's a small percentage of the population are the scientists. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's quixotic, the very idea that I have in my mind. But I believe in miracles. I mean,
Yeah.
extraordinary things do happen, and it's you mentioned YouTube. Uh, YouTube is an extremely interesting resource. Particularly, I have been watching for the past 2 years, almost every day, accounts of the near-death experience. I don't take notes because then there's enough work that I'm doing. But the overall impression of, I mean, when Bruce, for example, or Ken write a book, they write it for the consumption of other scholars. But when people who have had an experience and they're not particularly articulate, they don't know fancy language, they don't use uh, technical jargon, but they struggle to effectively describe what they experience, the impact on me is even more powerful because you can see they're telling the truth. They're not making this stuff up. And uh, it, to me, it's been an education on top of an education, watching story after story. Some of them, I admit, I want to copy them down and write to them and all that, but the overall impact is very suggestive about the possibilities of human beings being genuinely transformed. And who knows what new technologies we may yet discover to facilitate this process. As it is now, it's amazing that you can be dead. Used to be, I keep coming across stories of people who are clinically dead for half an hour, 40 minutes. And it used to be only like 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And they have these long, powerful, totally transformative experiences. The day may yet come when we can learn how to induce the equivalent of a near-death experience without literally having to risk losing our lives. And that could be a turning point in human history. If we could reach that level of technology, spiritual technology.
Yeah, I forget what book it was in or if it was in one of his videos, but I remember Dean Radin explaining that they have identified a genetic marker for psychic ability, and that, yeah, they're working on trying to figure out how to activate that epigenetically, and maybe with CRISPR, which is that gene editing thing. And so who knows what's around the corner. What with AI working on like biotech with teams of, geneticists and whatnot, they were already coming out with they recently, not long ago, figured out a way to convert adult cells into pluripotent stem cells, which are like the equivalent of an embryonic stem cell, which is like a super stem cell, just by using AI and the knowledge that they have. So, who knows what's around the corner. It's all very intriguing and promising. We'll have a few more minutes before we turn it over to Q&A. But I wanted to ask you, just, for the sake of bringing the skeptic in and giving the skeptic a little bit of a run for his money. David Hume, famous champion of empiricists, his critique of miracles. Miracles is the main concept in your book. As you, I'm sure, know, he thought the concept was self-refuting or incoherent because, by definition, the strict sense of miracle in the biblical sense, not like miracles of modern science, or it was a miraculously coincidental thing, but, walking on water, that kind of miracle. David Hume said, for it to count as a real miracle, it has to violate a law of physics. Mm-hmm. But law of physics, the concept of law of physics, is something that's never violated. So it has to do something that's impossible, but it's impossible. So he made the 1-2 punch, like anybody who claims that they saw or experienced the miracle should refute the concept automatically. And I make a parallel with deja vu, not exactly isomorphic, but similar. If you interpret deja vu as the feeling of remembering something that you didn't experience, well, you can only remember something that you experienced. So in some sense, that interpretation of deja vu is similarly incoherent and self-refuting. What do you say to these skeptics, Michael?
Is that Hume's mistake assumed that we know all the laws of nature, A, and B, that the laws of nature are, in fact, implacable.
Right.
I mean, what would he have done if he was sitting in front of Joseph of Cupertino? And Joseph takes a look at a photograph, at a painting of the Madonna, and up he goes into the air. So what's going on there, buddy? Actually, Hume has written, in his essay on miracles, he has a discussion of some reported miracles of the day. You must remember that. I've forgotten the name of the group. It was a Jansenist holy man who died, and in France, and he triggered a whole bunch of weird psychic phenomena, which everybody agreed to, including the Jesuits, who were the enemies of the Jansenists. Everybody saw this thing. And the wildest stuff, by the way, if you haven't looked at it, check it out. It's totally fascinating. And Hume still says it can't have happened. That means everybody was deluded. Everybody was
Yeah.
hallucinating. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. His
Yeah. It's an
argument,
a priori argument. It's a priori. It's similar to like when someone who believes Parmenides is right, that change never happens, and then they reason that, well, the concept of change contradicts itself logically because nothing can emerge out of nothing or enter into it, and change involves intercourse with nothing and something, so therefore it's impossible. And then they deny their senses, right? So it's similar to this kind of denial of the senses. But empiricism is supposed to save the appearances, right? Save the phenomena. We start with our sensory experiences, but all right. So everybody's going to decide what they want to believe. I want one quick question before we turn it over to Q&A, just because this is my favorite topic. I have had many of these experiences, and I attribute my vulnerability or sensitivity to them or proclivity to have them to my serious meditation practice. The very first experience that I had was an accidental meditative experience that I had at the end of a simple yoga class, lying in deep relaxation. I had an out-of-body experience. That put me on the trajectory of learning everything I could about yoga and meditation. I become a hardcore yogi as a result, and then I had all these phenomena happen to me throughout my life. All right, so one of my prized theses, and I didn't invent this idea. Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, says that if you master one pointedness meditation, you will open up these psychic abilities in you. Do you have anything to say about that? Do you practice meditation, or does these things just happen to you anyway?
well, I tell you about myself. The answer to you is you just did the right thing, period, and proved it. Of course, I've read Patanjali and all of the yogis and mystics, and they all say the same thing, or almost the same thing,
Yeah.
with variations. You gotta empty your mind, still your mind, and that allows, as it were, creates the space where these things that happen. So, but as for me, oddly enough, I'm not much of a meditator. Um, Maybe my meditation is done. I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of painting. I'm a painter. And when I'm painting, I'm in another world, you
Yeah.
see. And I do, however, do breathing exercises and some meditation. But I can't say that I can identify a connection between my meditation, as you did, with the paranormal event. I have a feeling that I would get results if I did the serious meditation. But uh, no, great what you're doing and what you've done. I mean that's beautiful. I am lucky enough to have had just the spontaneous
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah, the association for me, and I know this is anecdotal, everybody's different, um, is that when in the periods of my life when I was a hardcore practitioner of these techniques, I had the most psi experiences. And when I decided to have fewer of them, I lowered down the dial on my practices and I had fewer of them because I didn't want to live in a supernatural, kind of bizarro world all the time. Um, all right, so this is great. Let's open it up. I'm going to remove the spotlight so that we can get everybody else in here. Is everybody seeing everybody else? Oh, we're down to only a few of us. Some people came and left. Are we still spotlighted? How are you guys seeing this? We're still spotlighted? Okay, so I have to, just by changing my view, didn't do it. So remove spotlight. And let me remove the spotlight from me. Where'd it go? Remove spotlight. Okay, are we all equal now? No? We are. Okay, great. So the floor is open to the audience here to ask Michael or me questions or make comments. Or if you want, try to make Michael's music stand move.
By the way, I don't play the flute anymore. I just drum. Well,
Go ahead, Boron.
Uh, since Rick already mentioned that I'm on the skeptical side, propose how we can eliminate skepticism. I'm glad that you're an empiricist, and because so am I. But as far as empiricism, it doesn't really stop at the door of personal. As far as empiricism is concerned, one of the biggest edges of it is that it enables us to make predictions. So, in order to eliminate that skepticism, allow us to follow where you're leading. I have some proposals. You tell me whether it makes sense. Particularly struck by this ghost visiting, friendly ghost. To make some kind of prediction, would it be possible to figure out somehow how to friendly ghosts to learn truth, predict something that is better, and to go into something political? I don't know. I could say Putin is better, and if you can have friendly visit Putin, you might learn something about his intentions. Not go into politics because I don't know, even on the side of Putin. I hear something that rather proposed, which is this AI thing, PPT. It's killing us. I don't know whether you're teaching for students. If online, they're all not all, but a number of them.
So pause for a moment, Boron. You're breaking up a lot for me. Are you breaking up for the others also?
I could not make out exactly what he's saying.
All right, so let me try and repeat what I've heard so far, almost like a translator, as if this was another language, because I'm familiar with Boron. So even though he's breaking up, I think I'm getting most of it. So he was saying, as far as your ghost, your friendly ghost encounter, who moved your music stand. Oh no, well that was another ghost. That was different. That was a woman out of her body, but. Either one of those, maybe it would be interesting. He's predicting, he's like, as an empiricist, science, one of its greatest things, and which validates it, is that it makes predictions, and then if they're confirmed, they count as evidence for the hypothesis. So Boron was suggesting it would be an interesting experiment to get one of these out-of-body experience experts or a ghost or whatever to go visit Putin and perhaps influence him. So say more, Boron. I think that did I miss anything so far?
I want to go there because that's political. I want to be on the ground. What I'm hoping that could be done. Those experiences or friendly goals to visit our students who might be cheating about ChatGPT in order to are they cheating or not?
I think Boron is being comical now. What he said, I forgot to mention this, is speaking of AI. I don't know if you're still teaching, Michael. I hope you're not, because now when you read students' essays, they are almost more than half of them are written at a level. Even we're in a community college, Boron and I, which is freshmen and sophomores in New York City, who are undereducated from going through the public school system in New York City when they've gotten social promotion. Their reading and writing level is something like 7th or 8th grade. If they're lucky, it's ridiculous. It's really bad. And before AI came around, we could just tell how bad their writing was. And now we're getting graduate level expert essays from them. They're cheating. They're using AI. And we even, they're so bad at it that we even get, I had one recently that the first sentence said something like, I will try to compose an essay as if I was in the discussion group that you referred to, right? Because like in my prompt, I tried to just get the students talk about what happened in class so they couldn't look up anything online. And they just copied that. They didn't even read it. They're cheating. So Boron is saying, can we maybe use these out-of-body experiences to go watch our students and catch them cheating? Boron, you're being funny now.
It's serious, because like if we can do that.
I, it's possible, but I would rather to take your idea, if I may, and suggest that there is a thing called prayer, and people, there are evidence of people who engage in group prayer or group meditation and try to influence people. For example, if they're ill, and there's literature out there indicating that that's possible. But you've added another idea, the possibility that we could learn as civilized human beings to concentrate our psychic energies on influencing for the better some of the some of the wretched people out there in politics that are wreaking havoc on our planet in so many different ways. But that idea of a group effort to psychically influence and enhance people in various ways has a lot of data behind it and is a possibility. And who knows what might happen if enough dedicated people got together and tried to do some experimentation along those lines.
Michael, I was a student of Ram Dass, aka Richard Albert, friend of Timothy Leary, when I was a teenager and I got into all this stuff. He happened to be in a spiritual community in New York City, and I wound up in there for a few years. And years later, I remember him telling the story that somebody came into his meditation room and saw a picture of one of the President Bushes, I forget which Bush it was, and asked him, why do you have that guy on your altar alongside these saints and yogis and whatnot, and your guru and everything? And he said, I'm praying for him. And then years later, the same thing, someone saw Trump on his altar and asked him, what's Donald Trump doing on your altar? He said, he has a lot of karma. I'm praying for him.
It is the thing, the philosophy of love that emerges at the highest reaches of spirituality says that we need to not hate, sorry, I slipped that word in, love our enemies, and try to change them in positive ways. There are some people out there that personally, I doubt that it's even conceivable that they could be influenced, but who knows? Who knows? In desperate situations, we try desperate, experiments. Excuse me 1 minute. So we can make a joke out of this, but there may be some value to the discussion.
Yeah, I read about those studies that you're talking about where, with control groups, with people sending positive thoughts or whatever, various forms of things that either are directly or resemble prayer or visualization, meditations for someone or whatever. And there are empirically, statistically significant effects from these things that have been recorded under really controlled, very many of these experiments support that. And it seems incredibly counterintuitive, but so do so many other things that have been proven. I'll just mention and this was one of the questions I was going to ask you, but we went over, so I'll answer it myself. I wanted to have enough time for Q&A. One of the most impressive experiments it's about this effect called presentiment instead of precognition, and I'm sure Michael knows about this, where people are hooked up and, they're monitored, their brain waves, galvanic skin response, heart rate, all these different measures of their physiology. And they're shown positive or negative images or neutral ones, randomly every so many seconds. And they seem to be indicating by visceral bodily responses an expectation that an erotic or a frightening or dangerous or repulsive picture or a neutral one is going to come way above statistical, 1/3 or whatever it is, that it's 1 out of 3, right? So that, and this is lots of studies that have confirmed this effect. Presentiment. The body is psychically sensing what image it's going to be exposed to and responding to it before it happens. This was really written up, like a lot of these studies were written up in a book that I could think of the guy's name. I think it's called Time Warps. Jeff, something Wargo. Wargo is the last name. Just really fascinating stuff. So there's so much evidence for the reality of what falls in the category of action at a distance, right? What Einstein thought was spooky and impossible, but quantum non-locality is spooky action at a distance. And if our models of space-time are not fundamental, then these things are not violating any laws. And that's what you said earlier, Michael. Like, this is a primitive model of what laws are, right? So these things are not necessarily inconsistent whatsoever with scientific paradigms. Time loops, Eric Wargo. Oh, thank you, Michelle. She put it in the chat. All right, so Michael, while we're on the topic, is there one study that you would recommend to a skeptic, and not just the few people that happen to be in the room still, but this will go online and people will watch it? Is there one study like the one that I just mentioned on presentiment? That's one of the ones that really impacted me, that you think would give a skeptic, if they read it, and like Dean Radin said in the endorsement to your book, if you don't get it, read it again more carefully. Which one is there? One study that comes to mind for you?
A study that demonstrates the influence of that we can benignly influence one another.
Not just that, but of psychic phenomena, of the reality of these types of experiences that's not going to be explained away by some kind of reductionism.
Yeah, well, one book that I have recently gotten my hands on that has totally blown my mind. I have it right here, and I'll mention it. And it's called China's Super Psychics, and it's by, let me see the author's name.
China?
What?
Who's super psychics?
China.
China, that's what I thought you said.
China's Super Psychics. It's got a Paul Dong, Gong is the name, and Thomas Raffill, and the Raffill is Raffill. This book is, I hate to use the old expression, mind-blowing, completely mind-blowing, and it's highly recommended.
Okay, thank you. All right.
There are other examples. We can be in touch on this, okay, and continue.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that.
That book will blow your mind. And you don't have my book on miracles yet, right?
No, I don't. It was a lapse on my part. Normally, I would have requested it earlier, but I've been so busy. But normally, even if I didn't, I would have asked for it in the last couple of weeks or just bought it myself. But my wife had an accident a couple of weeks ago. She wound up in the hospital and rehab, and it's just been eating up all my time. I'm behind in everything. It's like, Just 2 days ago, I remembered, oh, we have this interview with Michael Grosso. Do I have the book? I went around looking. I thought maybe you sent it to me already. I'm looking in my emails, and I'm like, no. I said, okay, so I'll have to read it afterwards. But I doubt that there'd be anything in there that was really news to me because I do a lot of reading in this domain. But I still want to read the book. So, yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Address, you sent me your address, right?
Yes, I did.
I'll-
Thank you.
It'll be in the mail for you soon.
Yeah, no rush. Michelle or Hadi, do you guys have any questions or Boron again?
I have a commentary on this is ancient stuff though, but the so-called American prophet, Edgar Casey.
Oh,
And the whole phenomenon, it's sounds very true and very real in terms of what he did with diagnostics in the medical sphere. He had no knowledge, medicine. He just read that the humans, and he did that with financial speculation too, and successfully established hospitals. And I had no follow-up on that, but he's the most outstanding in terms of predictions on this this range of your thought.
Well, oddly enough, I have only recently begun to pay attention to him. And I have an intention to get some of his books. And on YouTube, I came across a couple of things about him that surprised me in a very positive way. And so, yeah, absolutely, go for it. And I can't add to his reputation. He's quite well known as an accomplished.
I just remember that his background, again, these things are very powerful when you look back. Theosophy was this family belief, and if you remember, Theosophy was this
Theosophy, yeah.
Theosophy, this Russian Blavatsky and
Madame
all these
Blavatsky,
people
yeah.
involved. So his family, Edgar Casey's family was believers. So he was raised in that background as a theosophist. And then he comes up with this, and there was a book on that, I think, kind of on him. It's called The American Prophet. I forget who wrote it, but it's fast. Actually, I presented that as a counter evidence to somebody from Christian Science, and they believe in a lot of miracles, and kind of taught me and tried to teach me. Then I gave that book there. I said, just read it up. It's he's not postulating too much Christianity or science or anything. He's just doing it.
Right.
In that case, he just did it. And I think I know this is to do with, this is quite a different angle. I'm a psychiatrist, by the way, and there's a delusion called Cotard. Cotard delusion is, as a person, you believe that you're dead. And it's a very fascinating concept because mostly we talk about near death and, external, but this internally to you, you're dead. And one of the foundational things, this is to do with, deep depressive conditions and delusions. But there was the most fascinating one was this gentleman, I think they had some database based on some Scandinavian countries. Anyway, they correlated this lady who was on renal dialysis. And somehow the kidney condition was a critical state, complicated by, she took some antivirals, simple antivirals, these, I forget the name of the antiviral. Anyway, she took that and she got overdosed on it because of the kidney situation. And she was, can you imagine if you internally feel I'm dead and she's running wild to the ER and of course, they figured that the renal compromise was there, and they dialyzed her, and she was relieved of that feeling of being dead. It's very fascinating in a molecular level. I don't know too much. I'm sure some of these molecular science kind of people figured out, the details of it. It's a fascinating concept from other functional things that we do in psychiatry, deep depression, and people do have that. They just live in the surrounds of mortuaries and stuff like that. But this woman was relieved 100%, just a molecular basis of an antiviral drug that went toxic. It's a simple herpes simplex virus, and the kind of pharmacy she took was to neutralize the virus. So some of this is fascinating from some real life situations of being dead. For her, she was dead.
Well, there's an awful lot of fascinating material out there
Yeah.
to explore. And
And the other thing I heard was through one of these gentlemen who was more open to these kind of experiences of other people. I think somewhere in the South, Texas, Arizona, wherever, he was a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, whatever, but he made an effort to advertise in the media, looking for people who had these kinds of experiences, but they were terrified of communicating that to anyone. So we advertised and invited these people to come and tell stories. That's what you're talking about. People, I can impress on personally experienced it, but these people came up here, tremendous database on that. I don't have too much follow-up on that, but I think is the character's name, but it's basically psychotherapist.
I forget the name, but
Miller, I think he's a Miller. Miller is his name.
I remember seeing, when you're watching a YouTube video and then it's over, something pops up as the next one to watch or something. And I remember, I forget how, I think it was John Vervaeke, the cognitive scientist. I was watching one of his videos, and then the next one that came up was some guy who has a show. I forget his name, but a very funny guy who's like an interviewer, like a Howard Stern kind of guy or something. He's like a little bit of a hillbilly, but he's a really smart guy, and he gets a lot of guests, and I forget his name, but he had a guy on there, and it just caught my eye because the guy, whose name I can't recall, was one of the world's leading researchers on near-death experiences. And I started listening, and I was just blown away by hearing about how much evidence he said they have. Like he created a website that people can report their experiences on. I think they have several thousand people who just have already posted their experiences online on his website. And then like he's written a couple of books about it. I read the books. I'm blanking on his name, but this was really incredibly mind-blowing. Michelle, did you?
Is it Jeffrey Long? And was the host Theo Vaughn?
Yes, Theo Vaughn is the host. He's a funny guy. He interviews a lot of people. I think he might have even interviewed John Vervaeke. I think that's maybe how it happened that I saw the next one was, what's his name? Jeffrey Long?
Jeffrey Long, yeah.
LOG. Yeah, he's got a couple of books about near-death experiences that are just mind-blowing.
I've listened to him a lot, and I haven't looked at his books, but I mean to get on he has a website.
Yeah, where people report these, and anybody can go and read them. He's got thousands of them there.
I think that's marvelous, frankly.
Yeah.
And quite apart from listening to people, and you have people that have their own resources, and so there's a lot of information that's floating around now that has creative potential. Let's say, put it that way. That's exciting, and I am, somewhat optimistic about how these things could take off and evolve.
Michelle put the website in there, nderf.org. NDE, Near Death Experiences, Research Foundation, rf.org. I'm going to write that down. I want to take a look at that. nderf.org. Great. All right, so for my friend Boron in the room, the skeptics watching this, I struggle with my own skepticism, even though I've had so many powerful experiences. It just seems foolish of me. But I feel a kind of moral and intellectual responsibility to be as critical as I possibly can to see if I've been bullshitting myself, deluded, not paying attention, etc. And so I have to say, maybe not about my own experiences, but like what makes it more likely for people to be skeptical in this domain is that there are a lot of quacks, unfortunately, under the same umbrella. And I remember, in fact, one of our colleagues at the college and I were co-teaching. Sometimes they have like an English class and a philosophy class, and the students have to be in both classes. So we would coordinate what we would assign, and I have to like compromise with the English teacher on what books to use. And this one English teacher used a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. It was all about reincarnational memories and whatnot, and people getting hypnotized and whatnot. And so I remember reading this book because I had to teach from it, or at least my students had to write from it in the English class and then combine it with whatever was going on in my class. This is over a decade ago. I don't remember the details. But I remember reading this one account where the person was being like brought back and under hypnosis or whatever, and they were saying something like this. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's 3542 BC. I'm in Egypt. And I thought, at that time, there was no BC. How did that calculation happen? This is my critical mind. You know, when I come upon what strikes me as BS, my BS-ometer goes off. And like, unfortunately, there's a lot of that, you know, because there's people selling stuff and profiting off of this and everything else. And this is just a terrible thing. But I don't know what anybody else wants to say about it. I just wanted to bring that up.
So the woman who says that she'll draw a picture of the person you're going to marry, you suspect that she might be full of it. Have you seen this? That's a service. It comes up, even though I'm married, but it comes up in my social media feed. And this woman has a service and she'll say like, I'll draw the person you're going to marry. It's this huge thing, I guess. So
Yeah, and like California psychics, I hear this commercial on the radio. We money back guaranteed if it's not life changing. Goodness.
I have a question. It's not very well formed, and it probably will. It comes. I think I just have a dangerous amount of knowledge around philosophy. So I only have an undergrad, and it's from many, many moons ago. So one of the things that I'm wondering about is, I guess it's just like the basic metaphysics. So like the problem with Descartes, from what I recall, is this idea, and I think John Locke talked about it too, is how do you have the material interact with the immaterial? And that's why they sort of reduced it all to materialism, unless you're like a George Berkeley kind of guy and you're just walking around in God or whatever he was doing. And so my understanding, which is again wildly insufficient, of Vervecki is that he's trying to have a naturalistic explanation of things that might have been considered immaterial. Like I guess my question for Michael would be, does that concern you? And how do you resolve those things? And doesn't the idea that dualism is a problem presuppose something? Is that part of it? I don't know. So that's all I have. But you're all professors, so you're good at helping people who are lost. So I'll just take the help.
Problem at all. I am a body, and I am also a mind, and I can discriminate between the two. And what's wrong with that? You see, I mean, moreover, I mean, that's the way things are. And the fact that my mind is distinct from my body is already an argument for postmortem survival. Of course, I want more. I want evidence, specific proof. But I don't see, to go back to my buddy back when I was in graduate school, the curse of dualism. The problem was, for that guy, he was a materialist, and there was no room at all from the concept of the mind. I don't understand how anybody can argue themselves out of believing that they have a mind. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I know that my mind is one thing and my brain is another. And that's just the way things are. So I don't see the problem.
Well, Michelle, brilliant philosophers, as Boron will tell you, are still, not under any consensus about how to resolve these problems. If mind is immaterial, how does my mind not move your body? But, Michael's student's mind moved his furniture. But like, you don't need to be, psychokinesis is the ability of mind to move matter. But if dualism is true, then we all are psychokinetic, at least with our own bodies, because we can move our bodies, right? But, so how does mind-body interactionism work? These are all really complicated issues. And then you're right to bring up Berkeley. The idealists say, oh, materialist phenomena, physical stuff, is really not physical, or it's condensed mind in some sense. And then the materialists go the other way and they say mind is just higher order brain phenomena that's somehow or another illusory and it's felt a certain way. And then, they have, both of them are subject to problems. And, yes, the naturalist, John Vervaeke is a naturalist who's trying to show how it's all possible in a way that the things we normally consider supernatural are natural, given a certain kind of physics, right? Where, like people like Donald Hoffman or Bernardo Kastrup, they try to, and David Chalmers, people who believe in panpsychism, or, there's all these different models. Integrated information theory is another one. All of these different models are way too complex to try to solve in even a whole lifetime, probably. But Boron used to specialize in philosophy of mind in grad school. I don't know if he wants to say anything about this.
Let me add. As far as dualism is concerned, everyone is a dualist. It's a commonsensical freak that I started as a dualist, even as a philosopher. It's obvious. I agree with Michael. The post really occur when you try to reconcile mental and physical. You do it in a methodological. It doesn't really work, and that's why people on dualism. It's obvious if you want to do theoretical work. What Rick was talking about as far as interaction is concerned, you have huge problems.
Yeah, but I'll say one more thing, and then Michael, I know you wanted to say something. All of these models, physicalism, idealism, mind-body interaction, panpsychism, and the 9,000 other variations, they all involve some kind of axiomatic assumptions, and where you prioritize what's most real or what's most credible epistemologically. And those views are very complex. I don't think we're in any position to try to come up with a smart answer. And on the other hand, Boron, half of what you said broke up and I couldn't even get it, but I got a sense of where you were going. Like, yeah, methodologically, almost none of this stuff works. Michael, did you want to say something?
No, my I'm less bothered by all these theoretical issues. I just stay with I'm interested in experience, focusing on people's experience, on my experience, on the world as it appears to me, and I have my own sort of experiences, intuitions. I'm more of an artist nowadays than a philosopher. Okay, and I want to make things happen, produce things. Endless arguments about the various forms of panpsychism. I read it and then I'm bored. To be honest, I'm just bored. I'm not bored by experience, people's particular experiences. And then I do think, I do analyze, I do reason. I'm not abandoning my rational faculties. But I think, for me, at any rate, I'm not obsessed by trying to resolve every philosophical conundrum that I can spell out for myself as I'm journeying along in my life. I don't have enough time for that. And that doesn't paralyze me because I'm living, I'm doing, I'm producing, I'm trying to interact with the world. I happen at this stage of my life to be living by myself, which is both a boon and sometimes a little melancholy. I had a beautiful wife once, but we split up. And so, on the other hand, I'm I'm doing all right, you see, in my own sense.
Yeah, what I'll say about the metaphysics, Michelle, is that I struggled for many years trying to figure it out and came to a conclusion similar to Michael's, but like I take a metaphysical slash epistemological stance about these things that's somewhat similar to Michael's in this regard. I don't need to know what the ultimate metaphysics is. I have a lot of really valid personal experience, and I've done a lot of research into the validity of the experiences of others like my own to know that the standard models that are being vetted in philosophy for these things are inadequate and incomplete and partial, and I don't think I'll ever read or hear an argument that will answer those questions for me. And I think, like Michael, that's not the direction for me to invest too much of my energy, but I remain curious and open and interested and learning so that on some level that machinery is still always operative. But there came a point in time for me where I realized, okay, I can't put my life on hold pending the outcome of a millennia old attempt to resolve certain abstract conundrums like Zeno's paradoxes, let's just say, right? Like you can be in the grip of something that functions like Zeno's paradox, but if there's an arrow coming your way, you better get out of the way, right? So my life is like an arrow coming my way, and I need to respond to it. And that's much more pragmatic. And I guess I'm more of a pragmatist myself. And I should mention about pragmatists like William James. All right. Great. One of my favorites. But I forget the names of these people. It'll probably come to me. His Varieties of Religious Experience is a great overview of this whole domain. But in the last maybe 2 years, 2023, 24, 22, I forget, a book came out called The Varieties of Spiritual Experience, which is an updated version of James's research. It incorporates all of James's research, but all the recent new research in the last, 50 years or so, from neuroscience, cognitive science, you name it, all sorts of studies and everything. And then it's just a book that if you look at it, it also takes the phenomenological or experiential approach seriously. What are people's experiences? What studies have been done to validate them? And there seems to be enough real there to not simply dismiss all of this stuff. And I think that's important for people who are worried about mind-body interactionism and things like that. But everybody has to make up, of course, their own mind and their own beliefs about whatever it is that's on the table.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Yeah, well, look, we are on the 90-minute mark here. And Michael, is there anything else you'd like to say before we end? I'd like to always leave the last word up to our guest. And if you want to mention the name of that book coming out, does it have a name yet? Or where people might want to reach you, your website, whatever you want to say.
I do have a blog Consciousness Unbound .blog.com, and I write short pieces, and I would love to be in touch with some of you guys, because it's amazing. A lot of people read my blog, but very few comment or interact. And try as I may, eventually, tons of people read it, but they don't say much.
Yeah,
One place to stay in touch if you're interested.
sure. Consciousnessunbound.com.
Consciousness Unbound .blogspot
Oh, .blogspot.
.com, and then the .com.
Thank you. Blogspot. Okay, great. Anybody else want to say anything? Well, I just want to say thank you, Michael. I've been wanting to have an in-depth conversation with you for a while. Like I mentioned earlier, I met you at APPA once, and I had read Soul Making. Was my students were reading it, and I remember you telling me at one point I might have seen you at another APPA event, and you mentioned to me in passing that you had a book, or there was a book that anybody who was struggling with Michelle's issue should read, and all their doubts would be allayed. Maybe it was the Miracle book. I don't know. I'm looking forward to reading that. So thank you for offering to send it to me.
Thank you all for the conversation. I really enjoyed it.
All right, we'll be in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah.
Ciao.